You want your seed starting mix to be as fine as possible. So this is a strainer, a sifter. You can buy one online, or you definitely can make one. And this is just a 5-gallon bucket to hold it. So the finer the mix, the better. And when you're starting your seeds off in little trays, indoors or outdoors. So sifting the peat moss, you'll be amazed of how much clumps are in the mixture. And probably the same goes with the cocoa coir. So once again, sifting this first is going to give you an advantage in making sure that your peat moss or your cocoa coir, which makes up the bulk of your seed starting mix, is going to be as fine as possible. And as you can see, there's lots of clumps left behind. You don't want this in your seed starting mix because you want to try to prevent air gaps. It's one thing to add perlite for aeration. It's another thing to have these big clumps that creates air gaps, which is not good for your seedlings. And you can see once it is put through the sifter, you can see how fine and nice the peat moss is now. No clumps or lumps in it. After you have your peat moss or your cocoa coir or a combination of them both sifted through your sifter, then it's time to put your ingredients together. For this seed starting recipe, I'm going to use 3 parts your sphagnum peat moss, or you can use cocoa coir, combination of them both, to 1 part vermiculite and 1 part perlite. Now your parts can be anything you want it to be. It can be a pint jar, it can be a bucket, it can be a pitcher. Whatever you use as a part is fine. So I'm adding my 3 parts of peat moss. One part vermiculite. And by the way, on the vermiculite, it's better to use the finest grade. You can see this right here is very fine. Very fine. And then 1 part of your perlite. Then just mix all of that up very well. Now it's time to add the water. And just mix this well. Peat moss has a tendency to repel water at the beginning, but once it takes on that moisture, it has a good tendency to hang on to it, which helps with your moisture retention with your seedlings, which is great. To this mixture, I use 5 pints of ingredients and 2 pints of water. And as you can see, just a little bit of water comes from it. The moisture in this is really good. So that's all there is to it. It is simple as that. Personally, I would not add any fertilizers to your seed starting mix because once the seed germinates, inside the DNA of that seed, it has all the nutrition it really needs for about 7 to 10 days. So once your seed germinates, then at that point, you can just use some liquid fertilizer that's appropriate for that type of plant. If you do a lot of gardening, making your own seed starting mix in the long run is going to save you money. Of course, it's going to cost you more money up front to buy the ingredients in bulk, but long term, it's going to save you money. Let's talk a moment about fungus gnats. Now, fungus gnats is something that's going to be in that peat moss or the other ingredients possibly that you purchase from the store. And they can be a real problem if you are growing your seedlings under lights in the house. So you want to make sure that you don't have these insects inside of your home. So one thing that you can do is when you are putting your moisture, your water into the peat moss, just make sure that it's boiling hot water. This can give you a jump start in killing off some of those fungus gnats. Now there's other things that you may have to do as well, but that would be a good start. Just make sure you don't mix it with your hands because of that hot water. Make sure you stir it with a stick or a trowel or something like that, not to burn your hands with that hot water. But using the hot water is one step in the right direction, and it doesn't cost you anything to do that, to try to get the fungus gnats under control. This will be the larva that's inside of the ingredients. Another reason why it's important to get the fungus gnats under control when you're starting your seedlings indoors is because they can carry a disease that will cause the plant to collapse and die, which is called damping off. Now I would wait adding compost or worm castings or ingredients such like that once the plant gets outside, either in a container for container gardening or perhaps when you're planting in the ground, because those types of ingredients has microbiology, it has soil life in it, and we really do not want that type of stuff in our homes because it would just cause problems. This is why it's important to make sure that your product is sterile before you start growing your seedlings indoors to avoid the fungus gnats. And of course, we all want to get a jump start on our gardening. So starting our seedlings indoors when the months are cool, when we're waiting for that last frost state, it's a good way to get a jump start on your gardening come spring. Perlite comes in coarse, medium, or fine grade. This right here is the coarse grade. It is mined out of the volcanic rock. It is a good soil amendment for soil aeration. Vermiculite is also mined. It comes in different grades, coarse, medium, or fine. This is your fine grade here. It also is good because it will help your soil retain moisture. But with most anything, you're going to have your pros and cons. So let's go over the pros and cons of perlite and vermiculite. Let's consider 4 ways that perlite may help your garden mix. Number 1, water retention. Because perlite has porous nooks and crannies, it can help retain some water retention. Number 2, aeration. Perlite can help with soil aeration, therefore it's going to help prevent soil compaction. Number 3, neutral pH. Because perlite has a neutral pH, it will not affect the pH of your soil mix. Number 4, affordable. Compared to vermiculite, perlite is more affordable. The biggest con about using perlite is that it's great for desert plants or plants that need to be well drained. However, it's not ideal for all plants. So if you're using it in pots or containers with plants that needs more of a consistent moisture level, I would just use less perlite. Also, perlite is extremely lightweight, so therefore make sure that it is mixed very well with the soil, because if not, on those windy days, it has a tendency just to kind of blow away. Now let's go over some pros, some advantages in using vermiculite. The number 1 advantage or pro in using vermiculite is absorbent. It has a greater capacity in holding on to more moisture than perlite. Therefore, it promotes water retention. So it's great to use in your garden, especially with plants that likes more of a moisture level, like hydrangeas or ferns, plus your vegetables as well. Number 2 is soil aeration. Just like perlite, vermiculite has the advantage of aerating the soil as well. Number 3, it has a neutral pH just like perlite, so it will not make your soil more alkaline or more acidic. Vermiculite is great in using in your seed starting mix to help retain moisture, to help get those seeds germinated. The biggest con about vermiculite is number 1, it's more expensive than perlite, but it has its advantage. Another thing is, if you're using vermiculite in your seed starting mix and you're finding that it's holding on too much moisture, then by all means just use less vermiculite in your seed starting mix. The bonus tip I would like to leave with you is testing your soil pH. Yes, even for your seed starting mix. Because if your pH is too alkaline or too acidic, it can interfere with the growth of your seedlings. I am going to be using a Kilway pH meter. The first thing I have to do is just condition the end part here with this conditioning film. This is a very accurate pH meter. Because I don't have a lot of mixture here, I'm just going to kind of bring it up to a heat there and then insert my meter and give it a couple moments to read. So on the meter here, you can see that it is quickly dropping. It's already down to pH of 6. So most vegetables like their pH around 6.5. And the reason why it's a little low is because I use 100% peat moss. Now coco coir has a neutral pH. So anytime you use sphagnum peat moss, you're going to have to use some lime to go with it to buffer the acidity of the pH so it can bring it back up a little bit. So the recipe is quite easy. For every 1 gallon of peat moss that you have, you're going to use 2 tablespoons of garden lime. The mixture that I did today is only about 2.5 quarts, so I'm only going to use approximately 1 tablespoon of my garden lime. I want you to see this. It's starting to rain outside, but I put the garden lime in the peat moss mixture and it had an immediate effect. As you can see now, it's 6.5. So that recipe is perfect. 2 tablespoons of garden lime for every 1 gallon of peat moss. And once again, I use the powdered lime, Dolomite lime. Thank you for watching this video on how to make your own seed starting mix. Do you have a special recipe that has been successful in your gardening in making your own seed starting mix? Please leave a comment below. Please take a moment to subscribe if you have not done so already. Giving a like and a comment and sharing the video helps the channel to grow. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.